In the distant reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, the Elysium drifted through the void, a solitary ship among the stars. Captain Sarah Blake stood at the helm, her gaze fixed on the vastness beyond the cockpit. The ship's monitors flickered with data from the surrounding cosmos, but Sarah felt an unsettling quiet settle over her, a silence that hinted at something ominous. The year was 2415. Humanity had expanded into the galaxy, colonizing planets and establishing outposts, yet the mysteries of space remained. And now, with the last communications from Colony 12 on Ganymede failing, Sarah had been dispatched to investigate. "Captain, we're nearing the coordinates of the last transmission," said Lieutenant Mark O'Connor, his voice breaking through her thoughts. He was a dependable officer, with years of experience, but even he could not mask the tension in the air. "Any signs of life?" Sarah asked, her heart racing at the thought of what they might find. Mark shook his head, his brow furrowed in concern. "Nothing yet. The sensors are picking up interference, but it could be atmospheric anomalies. Or something worse," Sarah muttered, her instincts sharpening. She turned to the crew gathered in the cramped cockpit, each face reflecting the gravity of their mission. They were explorers, soldiers, and scientists, all driven by the thrill of discovery and the hope of finding something new. But today, they were venturing into the unknown. As the ship glided closer to Ganymede, a sense of foreboding washed over her. The once thriving colony had sent distress signals, pleading for help, but the messages had abruptly stopped. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just searching for survivors, they were unearthing something buried deep within the shadows of the colony. The Elysium broke through the planet's thick atmosphere, the ship shuddering as they descended. The landscape below came into view, revealing a desolate wasteland where the vibrant colors of the colony once flourished. Twisted metal structures jutted out of the ground like skeletal remains, remnants of humanity's ambition now left to rot. "Touching down in 3, 2, 1, Mark announced as the ship landed with a soft thud. The engines hummed softly, the vibration soothing yet unsettling. "Prepare for landing protocols," Sarah commanded. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever lay ahead. "And keep your weapons ready." As the crew disembarked, the air was heavy with dust and a lingering silence. The colony was eerily quiet, the once bustling streets now abandoned. Broken equipment lay scattered across the ground, and the distant sound of wind howled through the empty buildings, a mournful echo of lives once lived. "Stay close, and watch your backs," Sarah warned, leading the way. Her heart pounded as they stepped onto the cracked pavement, the weight of the mission pressing down on her. As they walked deeper into the heart of the colony, the sensors began to beep erratically, signaling fluctuations in the atmosphere. Mark checked his device, concern etched on his face. "We're picking up unusual energy readings. It's like something is interfering with our equipment." "Keep monitoring it," Sarah said, her instincts on high alert. "We need to find the source of those distress signals." As they approached the central plaza, a large holographic display flickered to life, its image distorted and broken. It showed a map of the colony, with red markers indicating areas of interest. "There's a command center nearby," Mark pointed out. "If anyone survived, they might be there." "Let's move," Sarah urged, her mind racing with possibilities. The command center was their best chance for answers, and for survival. As they made their way through the desolate streets, shadows danced at the corners of their vision, and the feeling of being watched pressed against them. The atmosphere was thick with unease, each creak of the structures amplifying their fears. Finally, they reached the command center. The heavy doors stood ajar, creaking ominously as Sarah pushed them open. The interior was dark, the only light coming from the flickering emergency panels. "Split up and search for survivors," she instructed, her voice steady. "Mark, you're with me. The rest of you, check the lower levels." As they moved deeper into the building, Sarah felt a chill creep up her spine. The air was stale, filled with the scent of decay. She glanced at Mark, who was scanning the area with his flashlight, his face a mask of concentration. "Do you think anyone made it out?" he asked, his voice low. "I hope so," Sarah replied, though doubt lingered in her mind. The distress signals had indicated chaos, panic, a desperate call for help that had gone unanswered. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the lower levels, followed by the sound of shuffling footsteps. Sarah's heart raced as adrenaline surged through her veins. "Stay alert," she shouted, gripping her weapon tightly. "We're not alone." As they descended the stairs, the atmosphere grew thicker, the tension palpable. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and the feeling of dread deepened. They reached the bottom, the dim light revealing a long corridor lined with flickering lights. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, her instincts on high alert. They crept forward, the echoes of their footsteps mingling with the unsettling silence. And then they heard it, a low, guttural growl emanating from the darkness ahead. "Get ready," Sarah whispered, her heart pounding in her chest. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." As they rounded the corner, a figure emerged from the shadows, a gaunt silhouette, eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Commander!" Mark shouted, stepping in front of Sarah. "Stand back." But Sarah held her ground, her heart racing as she faced the figure. The tension in the air was electric, a standoff between the unknown and the determined. "Identify yourself," she commanded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a terrified colonist, disheveled and worn. "Help! Please," the colonist gasped, panic evident in their voice. "They're coming. They're coming for us." The growl grew louder, echoing through the corridor, and Sarah felt the weight of the impending threat. The time for questions was over. "Fall back," she yelled, leading the group as they retreated from the advancing danger. "We need to regroup." With urgency propelling them forward, the crew raced back through the command center, adrenaline coursing through their veins. The true nightmare of Helios Prime was just beginning to reveal itself, and they were about to confront the darkest corners of humanity's expansion into the stars. The command center trembled with urgency as Sarah and her crew scrambled to regroup. The panicked colonist, trembling and wide-eyed, stumbled alongside them, their breath quickening with every echoing growl that reverberated through the dimly lit halls. What is chasing you?" Sarah demanded, glancing back over her shoulder. The shadows seemed to writhe, taunting them with the promise of danger lurking just out of sight. "They've taken the colony," the colonist gasped, their voice a mixture of fear and desperation. "Creatures, mutated by the experiments. They're hunting us down. We thought we were safe here, but it's worse than we ever imagined." Sarah's heart raced as she processed the colonists' words. The peaceful existence they had hoped to find had transformed into a nightmare. "We need to find a secure location and arm ourselves," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. Mark nodded, already checking the weaponry they had brought. "We should head to the armory. It's a fortified location. We can regroup and plan our next steps." As they dashed down the corridor, the lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sounds of chaos grew louder, shouts, cries, and the unsettling growls of the creatures echoed around them, forming a cacophony of despair. "Get ready!" Sarah shouted, gripping her plasma rifle tightly. "We need to move fast." They turned a corner, and the corridor opened into a large hall. Sarah scanned the area, looking for any signs of danger. The hall was empty, but remnants of the colony's former life were strewn across the floor, broken furniture, scattered papers, and signs of a struggle. "Over there." Mark pointed toward a reinforced door at the far end of the hall. "That's the armory." As they sprinted toward the door, the growls grew closer. Shadows flitted at the edges of their vision, and the air crackled with tension. Sarah pushed herself to run faster, her instincts screaming at her to escape. They reached the armory just as the door slid shut behind them, sealing them off from the chaos outside. The room was dimly lit, shelves lined with weapons, ammunition, and survival gear. "Lock the door." Sarah commanded, her heart racing as Mark activated the security protocols. The door sealed with a resounding thud, but the sound of pounding fists echoed through the metal. "They're here," the colonist cried, eyes wide with fear. "Quickly! Arm yourselves!" Sarah shouted, grabbing a plasma rifle from a nearby rack. The others followed suit, gathering weapons and checking their gear. Mark glanced at the monitors lining the walls, showing feeds from various parts of the colony. The screens flickered with images of chaos, creatures tearing through buildings, terrified colonists fleeing for their lives. "This is worse than we thought," Mark said, his voice tense. "We're not just dealing with a few aggressive beings. This is a full-scale invasion. We have to regroup and figure out our next move," Sarah replied, her mind racing. "There must be survivors somewhere. If we can reach them, we can form a plan." Suddenly, one of the screens lit up, displaying a live feed of a group of Vasari, humanoid beings with shimmering skin and piercing eyes. They stood in the middle of the chaos, seemingly unaffected by the turmoil around them. "Who are they?" the colonist asked, fear creeping back into their voice. "They're the Vasari," Mark explained, studying the screen. "They're the indigenous species of this planet. If they're here, it could mean they're trying to help. But they could also be a part of the problem," Sarah said, her brow furrowing. "We need to be cautious." As they continued to watch, the Vasari began to move, their movements fluid and purposeful. They engaged with the creatures attacking the colony, showcasing an agility and strength that caught Sarah's attention. "They're fighting back," Mark said, his expression shifting to one of hope. "Maybe they're not the enemy. Perhaps they can help us," Sarah mused, her mind racing with possibilities. "We need to reach out to them." Before she could formulate a plan, a loud crash echoed from the door they had just locked. The pounding intensified, and the sounds of snarls and growls filled the air. "They're breaking in," the colonists screamed, panic rising in their voice. "Get ready!" Sarah shouted, positioning herself near the door. "We need to hold them off until we figure out how to escape." The door shuddered violently as something massive slammed against it. The crew braced themselves, adrenaline pumping through their veins. "Mark, see if you can access any communications equipment," Sarah instructed. "We need to reach out to the Vasari or anyone who can help us." As Mark hurried to the terminal, Sarah felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. The colony they had hoped to protect was crumbling, and they were now trapped in a desperate fight for survival. Suddenly, the door burst open, and creatures flooded into the room. Twisted forms with razor-sharp claws and eyes that glowed with a feral hunger charged toward them. "Fire!" Sarah shouted, her voice ringing with authority. Plasma bolts illuminated the dark room as they fought back against the onslaught, the sound of energy weapons clashing with the monstrous roars echoing in their ears. Sarah's heart raced as she fought, each shot a desperate attempt to stave off the impending doom. She could feel the weight of her decisions bearing down on her. Could they survive this, and at what cost? As the battle raged on, Mark finally managed to access the communications system. "I'm trying to contact the Vasari," he yelled over the chaos. "But I need time." "Then hold them off," Sarah commanded, her determination igniting as she stood her ground. The creatures pressed closer, but the crew fought valiantly, their will to survive igniting a fire within them. As they held the line, Sarah felt a surge of hope. If they could just make contact, perhaps they could find a way to turn the tide. But the storm of chaos was just beginning, and the shadows of the past were not ready to let them go. The chaos intensified as Sarah and her crew battled against the relentless horde of creatures. Plasma bolts illuminated the dimly lit armory, casting erratic shadows on the walls. The smell of burnt ozone filled the air, mingling with the sounds of snarls and desperate shouts. Each moment felt like an eternity as they fought for their lives. "Mark! Any luck reaching the Vasari?" Sarah shouted, reloading her weapon as another creature lunged at her. She ducked just in time, firing a shot that struck true. Still trying. Mark replied, sweat beading on his forehead as he tapped furiously on the terminal. I can't establish a connection through the interference, but I'm working on it. We need to buy you more time. Jake yelled, joining Sarah's side and firing at the advancing creatures. His hands shook, but his determination burned bright. I'll cover the door. Sarah commanded, stepping forward to take the lead. You two focus on getting that communication line open. As Sarah positioned herself strategically, she could feel the weight of their situation pressing down on her. They were not just fighting for their survival, they were trying to forge a new path in a hostile environment. The creatures surged forward, their eyes gleaming with hunger. Sarah squeezed the trigger, sending another bolt of energy through the air. But for every creature they took down, two more seemed to take its place. The tide was relentless. Keep firing, she yelled, feeling the adrenaline coursing through her veins. We can't let them break through. In the corner of her eye, she noticed a flash of movement. One of the Vasari appeared at the entrance, agile and poised. The being's glowing skin pulsed with a mesmerizing light, and its keen eyes scanned the chaos. Mark, look. Sarah pointed, but he was already locked in a struggle to maintain the communication systems. They're here. The Vasari sprang into action, their movements fluid and swift. With remarkable speed, they dispatched the creatures, each strike precise and lethal. The tide began to shift as the Vasari fought alongside Sarah and her crew. Who are they? Jake asked, astonished as he witnessed the power of the Vasari firsthand. Friends, hopefully, Sarah replied, watching in awe as the Vasari took control of the situation. We need to communicate with them. Just then, Mark finally managed to establish a connection. I've got it, he exclaimed, relief washing over him. I'm linking our systems to theirs. We can coordinate. Thank God. Sarah shouted, but her joy was short-lived as a massive creature lunged toward her. In a split second, one of the Vasari leaped in front of her, blocking the attack with a fluid motion and delivering a swift counterstrike. Stand firm, humans, the Vasari called out, its voice resonating in Sarah's mind. We will fight with you. With the Vasari joining their ranks, the fight transformed. The creatures that had once seemed so intimidating now faltered under the combined strength of the crew and their newfound allies. Let's push them back. Sarah shouted, rallying her crew. We have a chance to regain control. They fought together, a unified front against the encroaching darkness. The Vasari fought with an elegance that belied their ferocity, each movement a dance of power and precision. Sarah felt a sense of camaraderie blossom, a bond forged in the crucible of battle. The tide began to turn as they pushed deeper into the horde, reclaiming the ground they had lost. The sound of growls mixed with the energy blasts filled the air, creating a cacophony of conflict. Look out! Mark shouted, pointing toward a larger creature approaching from the rear. It was imposing, its muscles rippling and eyes filled with rage. We need to take it down before it reaches us. Vasari. Sarah called out, signaling to their allies. We need your strength. The Vasari surged forward, their collective energy palpable. They coordinated their efforts, surrounding the larger creature and unleashing a barrage of strikes. Sarah felt a surge of hope as they fought with unparalleled synergy. Finally, with one last coordinated attack, the creature collapsed, its massive body hitting the ground with a thud. The remaining creatures faltered, fear flickering in their eyes as they re-evaluated their odds. Keep pushing. Sarah shouted, sensing victory within their grasp. Let's finish this. As the last remnants of the creature horde fell, a heavy silence enveloped the armory. The crew and the Vasari stood together, panting and battered but victorious. Is it over? Jake asked, his eyes scanning the room for any remaining threats. For now, Sarah replied, taking a moment to catch her breath. But we need to regroup and figure out our next steps. The colony is in chaos, and we can't rest yet. The Vasari leader approached, its presence commanding. You have fought bravely, humans. We appreciate your strength and resolve. But this battle is only the beginning. We must unite to face the greater threat. What do you mean? Sarah asked, intrigued. There is a darkness beyond the creatures you have faced, the Vasari explained. An ancient force that seeks to reclaim this planet. We must prepare, or we will all perish. Then let's prepare together, Sarah said, her determination rekindled. We have a chance to save this colony, but we must work as allies. The Vasari leader nodded, a look of respect in its eyes. Very well. We shall join forces. But you must understand our ways if we are to succeed. As they stood together in the armory, surrounded by the remnants of battle, Sarah felt a flicker of hope. They were not just survivors, they were part of something greater. Together with the Vasari, they would confront the darkness threatening to consume them all. The Vasari leader, known as Elian, led Sarah and her crew through the labyrinthine corridors of the colony. The once thriving outpost had become a desolate battleground, the echoes of their recent victory over the mutated creatures still lingering in the air. But now, they faced something far more dangerous, an ancient force that Elian spoke of with reverence and fear. As they moved deeper into the heart of the colony, Sarah couldn't shake the weight of what lay ahead. The air grew colder, the walls of the passage narrowing as if the planet itself were closing in around them. The sense of urgency pulsed through the group, their footsteps echoing off the cold, metallic floors. We're approaching the source, Elian said, his voice calm but filled with gravity. This place was once sacred to my people. Long ago, we harnessed the power beneath this colony, but something went wrong. The force we sought to control was never meant to be disturbed. And now it's awakened, Sarah said, her gaze fixed ahead. What exactly are we dealing with? Elian stopped, his glowing eyes meeting hers. It is a force older than time, born from the core of the planet. We call it the Abyss, a convergence of energy that, if unleashed, could destroy not just this colony, but the entire planet. The creatures you fought are merely its heralds. Mark, who had been quietly listening, stepped forward. How do we stop it? There is a chamber beneath the colony, Elian explained. It's where we once controlled the energy, before it slipped beyond our grasp. If we can reach it and reactivate the containment system, we may be able to stabilize the Abyss. But it will not be easy. Nothing about this mission has been easy, Sarah said, her voice firm. We've come this far. We're not backing down now. Elian nodded, respect evident in his expression. Then follow me. We don't have much time. They continued their descent, the path becoming more treacherous as the air thickened with tension. Sarah could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the oppressive weight of something immense and ancient, a force that pressed against her very being. As they reached the entrance to the chamber, a large, reinforced door blocked their way. The Vasari symbols etched into the metal glowed faintly, a reminder of the power once wielded by Elian's people. This is it, Elian said, stepping forward to unlock the door. His hands moved gracefully over the symbols, activating the ancient mechanism. The door creaked open, revealing a vast chamber bathed in a strange, pulsating light. The room was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The walls shimmered with iridescent colors, and in the center of the chamber, a swirling mass of energy hovered, a vortex of pure power. The Abyss. Its presence was palpable, a living entity that pulsed with malevolent intent. We need to reactivate the containment system, Elian said, moving toward the control panel. But the Abyss will resist. It senses our presence. Sarah felt the hair on the back of her neck stand on end as the air around them grew heavy. The energy in the room was alive, twisting and shifting as if aware of their intrusion. She could hear faint whispers, indistinct, but laced with an ancient anger. Stay focused, she called to her crew, gripping her plasma rifle tightly. We're not leaving until this is done. As Elian worked on the control panel, the Abyss began to pulse more violently. The chamber shook, and the ground beneath them trembled. Dark tendrils of energy snaked out from the vortex, moving toward them with alarming speed. "They're coming!" Mark shouted, firing his weapon at the tendrils. The plasma shots hit the energy, but the abyss absorbed the blasts, growing stronger with each strike. "We can't fight it with force." Elian yelled over the roar of the energy. "It feeds on conflict." Sarah realized the truth in his words. The abyss thrived on chaos and fear. It was a manifestation of everything they had fought against since arriving on the planet. "We need to buy Elian time," Sarah ordered, rallying her crew. "Focus on defense, not attack." The tendrils lashed out, but instead of firing, Sarah and her crew moved with precision, dodging the strikes and drawing the energy away from Elian. The abyss seemed confused, its movements erratic as it failed to feed on the violence it craved. "I'm almost there," Elian shouted, his hands flying over the controls. The tension in the room was unbearable. Each second felt like a lifetime as the vortex of energy swirled violently, growing larger and more unstable. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, the weight of their mission pressing down on her. Suddenly, the chamber was filled with a deafening roar as the abyss surged forward, its energy coalescing into a massive, pulsating form. The tendrils lashed out in all directions, and Sarah knew they were running out of time. "Elian," she screamed, her voice drowned out by the chaos. With a final, desperate movement, Elian slammed his hand down on the panel. The containment system roared to life, and the chamber was bathed in a blinding light as the ancient mechanisms activated. The abyss recoiled, its tendrils flailing wildly as it was pulled back toward the center of the chamber. The vortex of energy shrank, its violent thrashing slowing as the containment field closed in around it. "We did it!" Mark shouted, his voice filled with relief. But Sarah knew it wasn't over yet. The abyss was still fighting, its energy struggling against the containment field. "Hold your ground," she commanded, watching as Elian worked to stabilize the system. The room shook violently as the final pieces of the containment field snapped into place. The abyss let out a piercing wail, its energy compressing into a small, pulsating core before disappearing entirely. Silence fell over the chamber. Sarah lowered her weapon, her heart still pounding in her chest. The abyss was contained, but the cost had been great. The colony was in ruins, and many lives had been lost. Elian stepped forward, his glowing eyes filled with gratitude and exhaustion. "You've done what many thought was impossible. The abyss is contained, but the balance of this planet has been forever altered." "We did what we had to," Sarah said, her voice steady but tinged with sadness. "But we couldn't have done it without your help." Elian nodded, his expression solemn. "Your people have proven their strength. Perhaps there is hope for this colony after all." As they made their way back through the ruins of the colony, the weight of their journey settled over Sarah. They had faced the darkness and survived, but the echoes of the abyss would remain, a constant reminder of the fragile balance between humanity and the unknown forces of the universe. Standing at the edge of the ruined colony, Sarah looked out at the vast horizon. The sky, once filled with storms and chaos, was now calm. But she knew that peace was fleeting in the cosmos. "Let's go home," she said, turning to her crew. They had faced the abyss and emerged stronger for it, but there were always more stars to explore, and more dangers waiting in the darkness.